5 years ago, our son begged to go see Don McLean in concert at the Missouri Theater in Columbia. We were fourth row center. As a baby in his car seat, the 1971 song American Pie often played on the radio. As a teen, he experienced my youth group lesson about American Pie and the Bible. At 18, with the song now downloaded on his phone, he wanted to see the author sing it in person, no matter how old the guy was. My experience with American Pie began early in my teens. Years later, I taught teens about the song and the Bible. The connection is that knowing history helps you interpret meaning in poetry and in Bible, including poetry in the Bible itself. You don't have to know any background to experience, enjoy, and interpret poetry and narrative in Bible or music. And yet, knowing the story behind the story can enhance and deepen your interpretation. My sister is a poet. Strangers appreciate her poems. Yet knowing the matrix of some poems about our family enhances my interpretation and experience. When Don McLean was asked what American Pie meant, he often quipped, "It means I don't ever have to work again if I don't want to." He never wanted to limit anyone's interpretation of his poetry, just write it and leave it. Biblical writers have left the interpretation to us for 2,000 to 3,000 years too. I spend a lifetime learning from trusted scholars about biblical background that enhances my interpretation today. I hearken to and discern the validity of voices of past and present interpreters as well. The more I learn what I need to know about the past, the more profound the meaning of a passage for my life today. I lived through the decade depicted in McLean's song. For some, I was aware, not just alive. While I don't have an hour to list the references in the poem, suffice it to say that it might enhance your interpretation of American Pie to know that in 1959, Buddy Holly, 22, Ritchie Valens, 17, and the Big Bopper, 28, died in a plane crash outside Clear Lake, Iowa. 10 years later, Meredith Hunter Jr., 18, was stabbed to death at a free Rolling Stones concert at Altamont, California. Between those bookends are poetic images that can rock your socks off. Biblical writers were living through their times in which they proclaimed how God and humans act and the vision of God's will and purpose. They didn't need to interpret what everyone around them knew already. They spoke the spiritual language of metaphor. They wrote in Hebrew and Greek, often translating Aramaic. I am thankful for the help I can receive from a great cloud of witnesses and God's Spirit to enhance my understanding and interpretation of Scripture. How is first hearing a poem, a story, a song, a passage meaningful to you? Where do you go to expand your understanding and deepen your response to what you hear?